Hey everybody, Texas Stroker here, Lance's Performance Shop, LoneStarMopars.com, and welcome you back to the Ram Revival. We got the motor pulled, we're checking out some parts, gonna slowly build it up as we go. You'll kind of see what we're doing. In the order that we release these, I believe it'll be intake, fuel rails, cylinder heads. And this is a big one. This is kind of one of those deals, the intake manifold. Why did we replace it? Kegger's great for torque. Kegger leaves a bit to be desired in terms of the plenum pan. Now there are kits to fix the plenum pan leak. However, this will hopefully result in a little bit better performance across the board, not only up top but down low. It's going to look a lot better aesthetically. That's kind of a secondary objective, but it should just be all around a better manifold is at least the hope. Pair that with the fuel rails. Again, we're hitting the aesthetic side of things. This aesthetic upgrade, yes. Performance upgrade, oh yeah. So this, however, is not strictly a performance-based upgrade. This is going to tie into the same vein that we would have with, say, the belly pan on the Kegger, blowing out the plenum pan all the time, right? What an issue is with the Magnum motor, aside from the plenum pan, you've got that obviously, but the heads, they are notorious for cracking. Not like catastrophic cracking, type of thing. It happens over time, miles and heat cycles, all that good stuff. But just kind of between the valve seats, if you're ever in the event of, say, having to replace components and you have the heads visible, valve covers off, maybe the gasket's leaking, who knows, but if you inspect it, you're going to find a crack. It's just something that happens. And this is going to mitigate that issue completely. Obviously, coming in, and at this point in time, I guess you just know we're rebuilding the motor, right? So why would we go back with the factory heads if they're not already cracked? They will crack. And we certainly don't want to invest time and money porting them, cleaning them, even doing a gasket match. You're kind of just throwing away your time and effort. Because they're a ticking time bomb, right? And that's where these come in, and that's kind of, the strong suit. If you could be 100%, you don't care how quick your truck is, you don't care about the throttle response, you need it to get you from A to B, tow, haul some things. This is still one of those valid upgrades in the sense that we're correcting a factory flaw, a fatal flaw, right, if you will. So again, you can certainly go in and repair your Kegger. You can certainly, keep cycling through stock type replacement heads. A common upgrade would be the EQ heads, right? They looked at them. Why are those cast? Number one, it's because they realize, hey, everyone's coming in and pulling, Magnum heads to put on their currently running motors because they crack. So they looked at the issues, they corrected them, and then on top of that, they kind of made some performance upgrades. There's actually two variants of those heads, and some people get, like the stock replacement, and some people get the one that flows a little bit better. Iron heads are heavy. That's another thing. These are light. This box right here has one of the heads. It's 34 pounds. That's just what we're going to go with. That'll include your minimalistic packaging, some cardboard, all that good stuff, the filler. These are also 34 pounds fully assembled. And I suppose we should jump in. Obviously, this is Edelbrock. Again, the camera. Obviously, we can't pan out and fit anything in here. But what I can do is bring you right over here. And if I zoom in, that part number right there, that is important. This is 61775. This is going to be for the Magnum, and it's going to be designed for a hydraulic roller cam. That's essentially what you had in your factory Magnum. Now, if you're pulling like a 5.9, from a Grand Cherokee, and you're going to put it in your 68 Dart, if you want to run a flat tappet cam, you would go with a different part number. The bare heads and the different part number, which I want to say, don't hold me to it, is 61779. Those things are missing in action. This is still, we're in the wake of everyone shutting down because of the, coronavirus pandemic and everything, and just ceasing production and kind of screwing up supply chains. I pulled the trigger on these ASAP. The machine shop, their distributors they typically buy from, didn't have them. They weren't going to be in until late June. That date just keeps creeping back. I come in and check it periodically. Summit actually had these in stock, oftentimes with cylinder heads. Any like expensive major engine component, it's oftentimes a deal where your third-party seller, Summit, Jegs, whatever you're shopping through, it'll be drop shipped. Yes, they're distributors. Sometimes they stock them, but more often than not, it's a drop ship scenario. It's not a huge deal. you know, if you order from Jegs, they ship the rest of your stuff, and then this ships that day or the next day from Edelbrock, hopefully. The problem is when Edelbrock doesn't have anything in stock, they can't ship it, and that's where we're at with Jegs. Edelbrock and Summit usually have really good deals. Summit, ever since this whole thing started, they have not had one of their, like, $25 off an order of, you know, $250, 50 off 500. This would have been a big purchase and it would have gotten money back. Jegs is still doing that. The problem again being, sure, I could have had $100 off my price from Jegs, but I kind of need to drive the truck, and Jegs wasn't going to have the heads until late June, if even then, because they were going to be drop shipped. So that's something to always pay attention to. It may not be as big of an issue when you don't have people, you know, running around crazy and shutting the world down, you know. But always be leery of that. You can, if it's not a priority build, if this is just you got all the time in the world, save the money. You know, just wait and save the money. If it's your daily driver, if you've got to have it up and running, if you need your truck, keep that in mind. Pay attention if it's drop shipping, if it's in stock, the estimated lead time, and proceed accordingly. But 61775 Edelbrock, fortunately for me, had recently dropped the price of their cylinder heads. I've looked at these in the past. I can't say for certain, but I want to say they were like 12 to 1300, again fully assembled. And this one, with the price drop just across the board, these are down to $999. So basically $1,000 a head. 2 heads are required, $2,000. In the future, you know, we could have, I probably realistically would have done bare heads and let the machine shop take care of it, get the specific springs we want, the valves they prefer to run, all that stuff. The issue there was the bare heads were not available. This is all I could get, and so this is the route that I opted to go. But here we are, again, 61775. Summit Racing is where I got them. I checked right before recording this. They are still in stock. So this one is sealed. I've got the other one open and on the floor. I'm just going to go ahead and throw it down here, and carefully, of course. Kind of showcase these heads out of the box and get them boxed up so nothing gets in them, and get them down to the machine shop. So 1 second. Alright, so this is how you are typically going to see the heads installed in your vehicle, granted with valve covers and dressed and exhaust manifolds or headers, but that's kind of just to orient you. The reason for that, these are your spark plugs. Now what's important to note, these heads will work with your stock exhaust manifolds. These heads will work with your stock intake. So if you're just constantly going through cast iron heads, if you don't want to, you know, if you're sitting there and you're weighing the options and say, well, by the time, you know, we tool up and, you know, assemble the EQ heads, you know, I'm right about the Edelbrock heads and I'm tired of the cast iron cracking. Whatever your logic is, this is what you would have. It will work with everything stock. So if your sole goal is to just never deal with the cracked cast iron head and you're buying this assembled, just going to throw it on, you're home free, use your kegger, use your exhaust manifolds, zero issues on that front. So that said, you can see right here we've got some kind of angled ports for the plugs, which will hopefully make them easy to change even with headers. Which, spoiler alert, maybe those are coming up soon, right? We'll have to wait and see. Currently don't have them in all honesty, but that is in the plans. So right here, this would be our exhaust ports, right? You can kind of come in, see the valves. We got the bronze guides. Again, fully assembled. We'll flip this around in a second. But in terms of the port work, it's really hard for this camera to see down in there. This is nothing special, nothing immaculate. It's a shame that Edelbrock, since the Magnum is kind of a forsaken motor, people neglect it, forget about it. It would be cool if they offered like a CNC program that was just nothing crazy, you know, just kind of even just a rough cleanup that they could call like stage 1 port and polish or something. Just flow a little bit better, look a little bit better, that type of a thing, and do it for a reasonable price. I think the vast majority of people that are buying the heads would get that, particularly if they offer that across the board, either fully assembled or as a bare head with their stage 1 cleanup. Case in point, kind of right here, these are the exhaust ports. They're a little bit better than the intake ports in my opinion in terms of like as cast finish. The rails there, I mean, there's a lot of, it's nothing major, don't get me wrong, but you know, like in terms of the raw casting, that could certainly be cleaned up and improved. A lot of people, when they go this length, they're probably going to gasket match, but just like a quick cleanup in here would be good. It's fairly smooth here through this radius, but we come around to the straight side, and again, there's just a lot of room for improvement there. Nothing bad, these are going to work just fine, but again, I'm just trying to say, hey, I think that's a service people would pay for. Granted, that is something you can easily do as well. If you go that route again, probably don't want to buy the fully assembled head, but this is what you will see in your vehicle, whether you leave it bare aluminum, paint it, try to go stealth, whatever your logic is. This is the side of the head that you will be the most familiar with. So put it off at a canter this direction, right? Kind of square it up for the exhaust manifold, picture your valve covers. And what I will do now is set the camera down, spin her around, we'll take a look at the intake ports, and then move into the top. Alright, so as promised, we flipped the head around for you. You can kind of see what I'm talking about a little easier on this side, right? So if we come in here, you can kind of see like this is a great machine finish, right, to have the gasket and the intake. And if you come in, you can kind of see where it was stepped out, you know, and that's good. That's real smooth. Even though it looks like it's stepped and rugged, you could certainly clean it up. But it is a surface that you can actually work with. The problem is, when I say as cast, this is what I'm talking about. There's nothing wrong with that. It's going to flow great, but that could easily be cleaned up. I'm talking just bare minimum. Don't go crazy, don't use some super stock template or anything. Just get that moved to where it's smooth, is essentially all I'm saying. If that looks like sand to you, that's what it would feel like with, you know, anytime you deal with aluminum, cast iron, what have you. Anytime you see that look, that, my friends, is just a little rough. Gonna flow air, but it's not gonna flow as good as if it was just smooth, kind of like you see here. And with CNC advances and stuff, that would be a super easy job, and I do think it would sell well. Same thing here, you know, that's just gonna be a water jacket, right? But that's real rough compared to in here, where they obviously, you know, have more concern. But that is something to keep in mind. Nonetheless, though, these would be our intake ports, which you can kind of see there. Something I do like, in the event that somebody, you know, whether you buy these parts from, you know, a local speed shop or a machine shop, and you're going to put them on, if you see the 61775 and it's fully assembled, that should be for a hydraulic roller cam. If you're buying this for your Ram or your Dakota or your Durango or Jeep or whatever, and you see the 61779 and it's fully assembled, you're going to have springs that are designed for a flat tappet cam, and that should raise an alarm before you assemble it and realize the problem, and then have to undo everything that you've just assembled. So keep that in mind. But that said, obviously we don't have the rockers or anything, push rods, but heads themselves are ready to go. Got the valves in, the springs, everything along those lines. There's a look at the top side. Something else of note here, one of the few differences really between an LA and a Magnum head. In LA, an old school 360 like you'd have in a 68 Dart, a 73 Duster, you're going to have a 5-bolt valve cover. If I'm thinking correct, which I should know this, but it would be 1, 2 in the middle, 3 there, and then split the difference between these, so you'd have bolt 4 and bolt 5. One of the upgrades, or at least intended upgrades from the factory when they made the Magnum, they went to a 10-bolt valve cover. So instead of having 5 total bolts, 3 and 2, if I'm thinking correct, 3 on the bottom, 2 on the top, we would have a setup where we've got 5 across the bottom, 3 in the middle, 4 or 5, 1 at the top, 2, 3 in the middle, 4 and 5. So in theory, that should clamp down, seat your gasket better, and minimize leaks, which, you know, some people have a constant issue with that, but, you know, it is what it is, so just be mindful of it. But I've got to say, these look really nice, again, out of the box for $1,000. You got to remember, this is not a Chinese job. This isn't some import. This is cast, assembled, finished, made, whatever you want to call it. Every aspect of these heads is American, and that to me is another selling point. So also, if you're doing like a show truck, aluminum heads are inherently going to be dressier, look a little bit better. Performance side and advantage is discounted. Just aesthetically, most people would prefer these. If you, for whatever reason, just want to make this look stock, I don't know, maybe we've got like an underground 4-wheel drive grudge race league, and you want people to think you have cast iron heads, just paint them black, maybe grind off the Edelbrock logo logo or something. But I gotta say, they're a pretty nice piece. What I'll do now is flip you around to the business side, and then we'll run over some specs. I start over here. It's not you that's sideways, it's the head, but you can see the Edelbrock Performer RPM. That's on both sides. Other thing that's important to note, these are pre-drilled to accept your factory accessories. Alright, so all the crazy standoffs and whatnot that you've got, you know, for your front accessory brackets, you're good to go here. Also, same thing on the back. Can't see it as well, but it's essentially a mirror image. Right here, this is the business side. This is what you're not going to see unless something really bad happens. You have to dismantle your engine again. But we've got kind of the funky face, right? It does look like a face if you use your imagination. Eye, other eye, mouth, right? Whatever. But what does all of this equate to? What's the story here? So if we come in, and this is something a lot of people never really take the time to see, and it's very simple to understand, especially when you have an assembled head here. But you'll note you've got big valve and little valve, right? So your big ones are going to be intake valves. The small will be your exhaust. These are 202 160. This is pretty standard across the board for LA engines, anything performance based there. Anything bigger, you're kind of getting into, like, you know, W5 crazy 340 territory, right? But 202 160, that is plenty good enough for a small block Mopar. Can make some really nice power if you're so inclined and have everything set up right. But as I said, these are your intake ports. Now, a lot of people would come in and think, okay, well, exhaust, intake, why is this one bigger? Well, it's not. Intake in the middle, exhaust on the outboards coming over here to the other banks, exact same setup, right? And if you trace this, which we can't really do because we don't have a cutaway, but you'll note as we come up to the top, this is the smooth side. This is our intake port side, and so the air coming through our throttle body, running through the runners of the intake, is going to come in. And when we've got the valves open, the cams articulated, it's going to let in the atomized fuel and air mix, right? And then in the compression stroke, everything compresses, we're happy. It's got to be exhausted. It's going to go through this valve that again will come down right through there to our exhaust port, which you can see. And again, the studs on both sides there, the bosses tapped out, that will be your headers or exhaust manifolds. So just a quick little rundown through that. You know, some of you, I realize a lot of people, you know, don't mess with this stuff. They just kind of like, oh, I want my truck to be good and have good parts. But very quickly, that's essentially the way it works. You can kind of see the casting there. And again, we've got that divider right here between your intake ports. That's going to come down, feed, everything magic happens with your bump stick, boom, exhausted out your headers or exhaust manifolds. 58cc combustion chambers, if I am remembering correctly. Let's go ahead and pull the specs up and we can actually run through them, make sure I'm not screwing anything up for you. So, again, part number 61775, combustion chamber, correct, 58cc. The intake runner volume, 176cc. Your exhaust runner volume, 75cc. Let's see here again, 202, 160 for the valves. We're not going to go into the crazy spring stuff because that can vary. Again, valve seats, which is important. That's bronze. That's going to be good. And that's about it, right? Again, 61775, I believe, as this one, and then 61779 is going to be for your flat tappet. So that's essentially, you know, the nutshell of it. Again, I'll have these linked down below. Again, I don't make a dime off of that. I do it for your convenience. If you see this and you say, hey, I want that for my upgrade, or that's going in my truck, whatever it might be, all you got to do is scroll down the description, find the link, and click it, and it'll take you to what this is. But that is it, man. This is what I brought in. That's what we're going to put on the motor. 61775, again, fully assembled, in part just because it's what was available. I'm needing to get the truck up and running ASAP. This isn't like a wintertime leisure build. It's not like that's my, you know, like play toy. That's like an important part of my day-to-day life. I currently don't have it, and it sucks. All the time now, like even just simple things, like I need to move out some boxes or something. They fit in multiple loads in the trunk of the Challenger, but it's like I could have fit all that in the truck and had space to spare, you know. So it's one of those deals you don't realize how much you need something until you don't have it type of a scenario. So just like little trips to the lumberyard and stuff, you can fit 2x4s, you know, in your in your late model Mopar, Charger or Challenger, but it's not ideal, especially with a rear strut brace, and you know, it's one of those things. If you have a passenger, it's really bad, but in the truck, you just throw them in the back of the bed and I'm golden. So that's what I'm missing out, man. And you know, sitting up high, being able to see in the restaurants and make sure, you know, there's nobody crazy in there, type of a deal. Little things like that that you start to miss with the truck being down. But once again, this is what I opted with. The machine shop's excited about them. Edelbrock's made these heads for quite some time. They're really kind of like your only aluminum alternative I'm aware of. Again, EQ heads and everything, a lot of people have run those with good success. I think whatever Indy made, which honestly their website's terrible, I think that really holds that company back. I'm not trying to be a jerk, but I've heard there's like new ownership or management or something. I think they're trying to improve that. Maybe they have, but every time I'm on there like trying to get intakes or, you know, valley pans or whatever, like I just get frustrated and leave. It's not fun to deal with that. But anyway, these are readily available across the board. It's just an issue I kind of coming in at a strange time, and I had to pop for what was available. So very well could be changing these springs, kind of going to depend on the final cam profile we wind up with. But they are a beautiful out of the box head. Again, my only complaints, and this is fine for out of the box, but I do think, you know, just like charge $150, let these sit on a CNC machine for a few minutes and sell them for more money. I think people would pay for just a quick cleanup. Just call it stage one, whatever cool marketing terminology they want to put on these things. And just essentially like a quick cleanup, I think would be well appreciated by people. Particularly, you know, if you're going to have like snotty buyers, kind of like myself, you're like, oh, well, you know, I could have cleaned that up a little bit better, right? But nonetheless, I'm pretty excited about them. I feel like it's a fair price for a fully assembled aluminum head. Definitely, don't get me wrong there. But we will be revealing more parts and more details about the build as we go. But these will be the heads sitting in the engine bay. So what are they on top of? What's the compression ratio? What's the cam? All that remains to be seen, but that's all I'm going to tell you for right now. But I will tell you these will be part of the mix, and I'm excited to have them. Looking forward to seeing how they perform, and looking forward to them hopefully not cracking. So that will be again a distinct advantage for people of all walks there. Nonetheless, that's what they look like. Hopefully this video helps you out. Again, if you were building a 5.2, 5.9, throwing one in an old Mopar, whatever it might be, this is a great option for you. Just be leery of the part numbers, 775 and 779 if I'm not mistaken, and go to town in that manner. But Gearhead's also a great option, particularly if you're going final assembly yourself or your machine shop is capable and you're comfortable with them. So otherwise, just weekend warrior stuff, just kind of wait it out, I guess, for the fully assembled head, and you know, bolt it down and go to town, right? So, with that said, I do hope you enjoyed. I hope you're liking the Ram Revival. Much more on the way. We got some cool stuff in store for the truck. So, I will quit rambling. Ram Revival. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Lone Star Mopars, same thing. At Ram Revival. At Lone Star Mopars. The website, of course, LoneStarMopars.com. If you have not subscribed, I encourage you to do so. If you haven't rung the bell, do that. Jump your truck across the creek, and maybe, just maybe, YouTube will notify you when we drop new videos. Typically tool stuff Saturday, truck or automotive content midweek. That's the current plan anyway, always subject to change. But if you've used these Edelbrock heads, what is your opinion of them? How do they compare to stock? What was your reason for switching? Was it just a deal that your stock heads cracked and you never wanted to deal with it again? Did you go through a couple of junkyard pairs? And this is something that happens to a lot of people. Your stock head's cracked. You say, no big deal. You know, I've got a buddy that's got like 4 or 5, you know, pick apart yards. I'll just run and see what he's got. And you pull the heads off, and then you take them to the machine shop, and they tell you it's got cracks too. And it takes just a couple of those experiences when you've wasted a couple hours of your life pulling a head just to find out that you can't use it because it's worse off than the ones that you have. That's when people pull the trigger for aluminum or some other alternative. So was your goal performance? Was it just, hey, you know, lightweight, it's not going to crack? What was your logic? How are you liking them? Have you had any issues? That type of first-hand feedback is what we like. It's what will help people out the most. But again, you've seen the face. You can't unsee it. You're welcome. You're cursed every time you see a pair of these heads You're going to see that now. And you can thank me later. But with that said, as always, thanks so much for watching. I'm going to get back to work pulling a 440 apart. I do hope you're enjoying, and I will catch you back here for more action from the shop.